And welcome everyone. One of the things that I brought with me when I joined Scaled Agile a couple of years ago is a passion for learning and helping other people learn and create all of those connections where we don't just stay in the space that we're comfortable with, but we find and seek out as well some of those opportunities where we can learn from other people. So that's really what I'm going to focus on today. This is something called informal learning networks that I'm going to share with you what it's about and how you can actually create these networks, how do you find them, and then how we can actually, what's that bridge into the Scaled Agile framework, because the reality is there's a lot of opportunity within the framework right now where you can really start to seek out and create some of these learning networks. So with that, I can remember the exact moment when I moved from being a transactional learner to a lifelong learner. These 6 words, just keep doing what you're doing. I don't know if any of you have heard these 6 words in a corporate setting, but these were life-changing for me in terms of my career and some of the things that I wanted to do. I really had felt like I needed to go outside of my enterprise to really start learning. And when I didn't have those opportunities, and sometimes you hear these words, you feel kind of stuck. So if any of you have heard these words, we're going to talk about this might be a starting point for you that might actually propel you into either finding or creating a learning network. So right here, what I really want to share with you is that when I started uncovering some opportunities to learn from others in my enterprise, I uncovered such a wealth of knowledge and expertise in areas that was way more than I ever could have imagined. And here I was just starting to tap into it. So it's a typical day in January in Chicago, where I moved from a few years ago, when I started my first learning network. I wasn't called that then. It was really a conversation about how I could learn from some of the people in some of the other areas of the business that I had met at one of the conferences. Learning takes on many shapes and many forms in enterprises. And so when I started having some conversations with people that weren't even in the same roles as me, I realized that I could learn from them, they could learn from me, and together we could pursue some opportunities to learn together on areas completely outside of our expertise. I believe that these learning networks are the key to helping enterprises continue to succeed at what they're doing, as well as finding opportunities where some of those impediments, some of those things that keep coming up over and over again, you can actually remove those without anybody knowing it ahead of time. So let's start with what an informal learning network is. If you were to research this and you were to look into some different learning books that you have, maybe perform some online searches, you might come up empty. There's not really much of anything out there. In fact, I remember one day I was so excited. I saw learning networks in the index of one of the learning journals or one of the learning books that I was reading. And so I was like, what's next? And it pointed me to just networks. And then it started talking about networks. And there was nothing else there. So one day I was telling a colleague of mine at about one of my informal learning collaborations, and I called it a learning network, and it just stuck. This seemed to be the best way that we could describe what these interactions would be like that we were seeking out. So this is my definition, and there's a link to a blog at the bottom that you're going to see, and it's actually a blog series. So I start with what a learning network is, how do you find them, how do you create them, how do you seek them out, and then how do you connect them to a Scaled Agile transformation. So really, it's a community of people that have a passion for learning and growing together. They catalyze learning in and through others across the enterprise. So that was another aha moment for me. At first, I thought, oh, this is awesome. There's other people that want to learn alongside of me. There's other people that we have that are experts that are willing to lean in and help us with these. And then we started to think about, but wait, we have networks outside of where we are. not just in different business units, but actually outside of our enterprise. So we actually extended the reach to people outside as well. So with that, when you look at that definition, it might seem a little broad, it might seem a little generic. So I thought it would be helpful to create a number of these characteristics of how do you know, how would you, when you think about an informal learning network, how would you describe it? So these different characteristics, we can start with creative curiosity. You're like, what if this? Are you one of those people that's curious about everything? You're like, why this, or what about this, or do we try this? One of those idea people. What about multiple lenses and perspectives, where you're actually moving outside of just what you think you could move forward with something, and you're like, hey, you know what? I want to know what other people think. Tell me what you think about this. We keep hearing about this growth versus a fixed mindset. The growth mindset, what more can we learn? Not just, here's where I am today, here's where my knowledge base is, but how do I grow that and continue to move forward with that? Relationship builders, this is one of my favorite. Who else might want to join us? So when you find people that together collectively you want to learn, you want to go on this learning journey together, you don't just say, okay, here's our group, it's formed, that's it. You want to make sure that it's continuing to be inclusive, and if other people want to join that are also interested in that, you give them the space and the room to do that as well. Mentors with mentors. I'd love to hear in the chat, how many people are mentors right now? Do you have a mentor yourself? And are you sharing what you're learning from that mentor and the growth that you've had through collaborating together with that mentor and learning from them? I'm often told you're a people connector. I love connecting people. Oftentimes it's, people that come to a conference and they're like, I would love to hear more about this. Do you have anybody else that's maybe in a similar industry or might have been in the similar spot that I'm in right now? Can you connect me with them? I love connecting people. That's one of my favorite parts of my job. And then there's a couple more on here on experimenting. Love experimenting. What are some of those things? What if we tried this? Even if it doesn't work. And then reflection and action. What could we do to improve this? So not just where we are right now and just continuing to look at, okay, this is what we have. How do I improve everything that we're working on together? All right, so this is a cycle that I had used, and it was really, it's what I did, and you reflect on things, what I did, what I learned from it, what changed, and then how I grew from that experience, how I shared my experience, and most importantly to me, how other people grew from that experience. So how do they emerge? You might be wondering, what do we do? How do we, how do I find these things? What starts them? I was reading a book by Don Tar Ostenwald called The Lean Machine when I first found this phrase, and he started talking about learningful conversations. And it's really about balancing advocacy and inquiry. So not only am I going to come into a meeting, as an example, or a specific place of business and advocate for whatever my idea is and say, you know what, this is what I think that we should do. I might advocate for it, but at the same time, I'm going to inquire about what you think about it. And what other ideas that might have been spurred on that you can share with us and share with me that emerged as you were listening to me advocate for my idea. So it's really extending that. So you're not just stuck in, here's my one idea that I want to advocate for, but at the same point, what are some of those other ideas that might be coming to light that we can use? So about, it was early 2020, maybe the first half of 2020, when I had my first conversation with Gary Ridge, who's the CEO of WD-40. And if I asked you to put in chat how many of you have that blue can with the red straw, I'm sure most of you would say yes. He has an entire website called The Learning Moment. And what this is all about is creating the space for whether something you were successful with it or something didn't work out as you had planned, whether it's a team, whether it's an entire Agile release train, wherever it is, you actually can come in front of the groups and come in front of the leadership and say, you know what? This didn't work out so well. Maybe we screwed up on something. But most importantly, this is what we learned from it. And this is how it's going to help us change direction potentially in the past. My favorite learning moment, didn't know that it was called this before, but I'm sure now that you look at, once I describe this, you might be saying, you know what, I've had a lot of those learning moments in my career. I'll never forget, I had one team that one of the team members had taken something out of production the night before the release. Now it was toggled off, so it wasn't visible to the customers, but as soon as we hit that switch the next morning, that one piece of code was missing and a lot of things blew up. Rather than trying to hide it and try to scramble, yes, they were scrambling and trying to find ways that they could fix this. But what they did was come in front of the entire art leadership, as well as other senior leaders, and said, look, this is what happened. This is what we're going to do to fix it. But most importantly, this is how it is going to change the way that we do things going forward. We're going to make sure that we pair on things, that we have some type of accountability to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. And can I just tell you, that is the one thing that those leaders remember about that team. They don't remember anything about the thing that went off the rails. They remember the solutioning that took place and the authentic way that they came forward and said, yes, we screwed up. Guess what? Could have happened to probably any of the teams. This is what we're going to do to move forward. It was pretty powerful to see. So communities of practice are another way that these can emerge. Many of you, maybe most of you, have been in some shape or form of a formal community where you're learning together. Could be, I think guild is another word that we use. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but we often call these communities of practice. And if you've ever been to one of these, a lot of times they have a formal agenda. You might have a speaker that's in there coming in to present. You might have some time to socialize, or it might be a little bit freer, more like that freer agenda where you kind of build it as you go and you come into that session and say, what's top of mind? What are some of the things that we want to explore? That's another way. Coming out of those, people can start to say, you know what, you had said, whatever your name is, you had said, you're really interested in this. Guess what? I am too. Would you like to pursue learning about this together? It could be a book that somebody mentioned and you want to, hey, let's have an informal book club or something like that. It could be, hey, you know what? I really, really need to practice having difficult conversations. I'm not very good at it. A lot of times I just try to walk away and maybe withdraw and hope over time things will get better. So there's lots of different ways that these could emerge, but the communities of practice is one that I've seen a lot of them emerge from. So uncovering these. If you shine a spotlight and you're trying to look like, hey, where are these learning networks in my organization, in my enterprise, whether it's a small business or a large enterprise, probably not going to find them. People in these networks aren't looking for somebody to pat them on the back and say, ooh, you know, this is another check mark I can put in my end of year on my review to say, look, this is something else I'm involved with. These informal learning networks are meant to provide opportunities for people to learn together and to upskill in areas that they are passionate about and they want to learn about, as well as people who already have the expertise in an area and they continue to learn more about that the more that they share with other people. So a couple of different things, and they're all around being curious. Why is my favorite word if you haven't figured that out yet? I love exploring things, not just helping people learn, but also finding ways that I can help them grow in their roles and in anything that they're doing. So the first one here, I want you to picture a few things. Imagine all of a sudden you are part of a safe transformation and there's a specific agile release train, maybe a few of them, that over and over again keep running into the same roadblocks. They have the same impediments coming up over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, you notice that these impediments are mysteriously removed without any leadership engagement. Sometimes you may not have known the full extent. It might have been an enterprise-wide constraint on your system. Could have been an impediment that was impacting lots of different areas. And all of a sudden it's mysteriously removed. Questions could be from the leaders like, and I've seen this happen. I didn't solve this. What happened? We've always been stuck in this area. Who fixed this? I'd love to have a conversation with them. My favorite one, where people were asking for days. And finally I said, you know what? The people that were most, say the word, negatively impacted by these impediments and really wanted to help solve for them, took it upon themselves to learn the skills that they needed to remove that impediment. Like, well, we didn't think we had anybody with those skill sets in our area. My response, you didn't, but other areas of our business did. They sought them out, they learned, and they were to really help that transformation moving forward. So informal learning networks are really there to solve some of these real business problems without anybody else knowing anything about it. So another, being curious, explore the most unlikely of places. Now I want you to think about that one business unit, that one team, that one department where you see low attrition, nobody's leaving, lots of innovation going around, lots of experiments. Being very curious myself, I remember looking across the landscape of my enterprise. And I remember looking at one art that where there was an attrition problem. You might not think it's an attrition problem when nobody leaves, but businesses typically think there's a certain percentage that are. Nobody was leaving. Another agile release train, many people were leaving. To the extent where there were missed deadlines, there were missed customer commitments, and so forth. And as I reflected on my observations, looking at both of these arts for quite some time, I noticed a few different patterns, a few different things that emerged. One art was learning, and one was not. One had informal learning networks with it branched out across the enterprise, and the other did not. The second, I'll call it the learning art, was learning from everything they were doing. Whether it was an internal or external, any place that they could learn, they were doing so, and they were sharing it. Nobody was keeping any of the learnings that they had to themselves. They were there front and center, ready to share it with the rest of their agile release train. It became such a community that I can't imagine if we ever had to make any changes to the structure of that agile release train. So watch the inspired people connectors. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. This may be the hardest to find because people who really find joy and inspiration in connecting other people together, part of doing all the good that you can, meaning I know that you need to know this skill and I know somebody else who has it. Those are those people connectors. But then all of a sudden, the focus is on that connection, but not on the person that brought that connection forward. So if you're one of those people that is always looking to connect other people together, the focus doesn't become on you at all. You might do this every day, but people don't do this because they're looking for accolades. They're doing this because it's the right thing to do. And they're seeing a lot of positive results, not just with the other employees around them. If they're a leader, maybe they're not even a lead, maybe they're an individual contributor and they're still doing that. So when I say the term, the people connectors, I'm sure you can probably picture a few of them. You're like, yep, that person, if we need anything, if we are looking across the landscape and we need somebody with a skill, we know who that person is. That person that has connections into some of the leaders or people in other areas, those are those people connectors. Somebody that everybody seems to know. So let's talk about connecting these networks with SAFe. I believe these are an essential tool in the toolkit of a safe enterprise in order to help really have that continuous learning culture. So while formal things are valuable, intentional, and really complement the shift, the creation of these learning networks really has a change in mindset to curiosity really being at the forefront. And if you look at the latest version that was released last year in SAFe, continuous learning culture is one of those big 7. This is one of those non-negotiables to really achieve business agility and have a successful transformation. So let's start with communities of practice. We mentioned this a little bit earlier and how this is a really good starting point. You might be just starting your transformation, or maybe you've been transforming for a while. Part of an agile release train, maybe you're not, maybe you're shared service, could be anywhere. Could be parts of communities of practice. So I want you to reflect for a moment on these communities of practice that you have, especially maybe if it's a role-based one. Do you feel like there's other opportunities rather than just focusing on that specific role, but other skill sets that you want to grow into over time? Maybe they're not even related to the current role that you're in. That's where some of these communities of practice can really bring forward a lot of opportunities to create these networks. The second one, as we mentioned, continuous learning culture. One of the big parts of this, which I feel really needs to be top of mind, is relentless improvement. Remember, it used to be this continuous improvement, like we're continuously improving, and it just seemed to get, at least to me, a little bit boring. It didn't feel like there was any sense of urgency to it. But relentless improvement means I am not going to just stay where I am. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to grow. And I want to continue to widen and grow the impact that I can have, not just for me personally, but for the enterprise that I'm a part of. The IP iteration, I could talk about this for hours. The innovation and planning iteration. This to me is sometimes a little bit forgotten, but one of the most important things that if you're leading a transformation, you can make sure is something that leaders really understand the importance of. This really gives people an opportunity to step back for a moment and reflect on all of the different things that they've done over the last period of time during that last PI, and look for some of those opportunities to get better. So there's lots of time that's baked into that calendar that's flexible of how I want to learn something new. How can I do that? And you might be saying, you know what, we need a workshop on coaching. We need to get a little bit better at our feature development. We need to find maybe a few more avenues, get a little bit better at understanding our customer. Maybe we need some design thinking workshops. Maybe It's an opportunity to connect with people of similar roles, or maybe just in another area of the business that really is a rock star on that. But you're not going to know that if you just stay siloed in your area and you don't try to extend beyond that. So I have a couple of different things. I always like to have a call of action at the end. Find one, join one, start one. I'm in a number of informal learning networks right now, and I want to share the one that has had one of the ones that's had the most impact to me personally. We all remember, now it's been what, a year and a half ago, when a lot of things changed in our world. And I'm part of a community, a global community of facilitators that we meet all the time, whether it's not just everybody in a group meeting. Sometimes it's like we have these other little groups, we'll call them informal networks, that we just kind of spin off, like, hey, I'm really interested in this. Let's focus on this, let's focus on that. But there were about 10 of us that April of last year met with Sharon Bowman, who's the author of Training from the Back of the Room, and I teach those classes, and that's something I'm really, really passionate about. And we met with her, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen a couple months from then, maybe even just a couple of weeks from then. So we kind of reflected on this for a couple of weeks and said, you know what? We need to create a virtual edition. We need to find some way where our businesses don't just stop. And we all in this group have a passion for helping people learn and train people to learn, not just train people to give them information. And so we immediately said, you know what, let's create this virtual edition of that class. And that's what we set out to do. We had these other informal learning networks that actually even expanded beyond that and started pursuing other areas of like, okay, these are other things that we do out in the marketplace that maybe we could work together to adapt them to this changing environment that we're part of. Another one, I started with some friends at Capital One, and we still meet together and we still learn alongside of each other. So they could be long-lived, they might not. If you're not continuing to learn from a specific learning network you're in, doesn't mean you have to stay in there forever. They can change, doesn't need to be static. So what I'd like you to do is think about being curious and finding one. Seek out one of these networks. Maybe towards the end of this webinar, if you're like, you know what, I would really like to meet and talk with some people about whatever, fill in the blank. Find out what other people are learning about, though, even internally. Look to your enterprise that you're in right now, or the business that you're in. You know that they're there. You just might not know where they are or who started them. Being curious and having conversations with people and say, look, this is something I want to learn about. Do you know anybody else that has this skill? I continue to do that here at Scaled Agile. Pretty exciting, especially when you get to start interacting with people that you've never had the opportunity to work directly with on a specific initiative. And then my second part is to join one. And then potentially start your own. Maybe you're like, gosh, I know there's a number of us who really are passionate about this, or we want to learn about this, or we want to get better at this. Maybe you want to start one and have that invitation to people that you know, maybe just in your enterprise, maybe extend. There's no rules around this. It's really just finding that space to provide an opportunity for people to learn together so that they can use that knowledge and that experience to help better not just their companies, but the environment within your companies and, frankly, our world at large. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time. As you can